working and it's not giving me an issue. Okay, so you guys should open up 8.2 in CodeHS. If you go to the agenda for today, it's linked directly to this. Go ahead and open this up so you'll be able to complete it with me and you'll understand what to do, because when you're working on your project, you'll be able to refer back to your work rather than not know what's there and how to do these things. Okay, so I'm not going to go through the video because I'm actually going to show you how to do these things. But a list is like a mutable tuple. Who thinks they know what mutable means? Yeah. It can be, well, go ahead, because what do you say? It can be what?
Like reproduce or remade.
Remade is a good word, yeah.
Altered or modified.
Altered or modified. What were you going to say, Andrew? Yeah, it can be changed. Okay, so good. All of those things, yes. So before with tuples, we couldn't change them. We couldn't change just one part. We could replace the entire thing, but you can't just change single parts of it. With lists, you can actually change just one thing in that list by using its index, which is really, really helpful, because before we could take parts out of it, but if I have a list and there's one issue, I don't need to splice the entire list. So for example, here where I have list of things, one of them is not a number. If I want to change that one thing to a number, I can just change that one thing. So you can see here, I'm going to run just parts of this code at a time. Let's see. Why can't I remember? How do I? Oh, I do this. Okay. How to comment out a large part of code. I've been writing in JavaScript a lot, so I forgot. Okay, so if I run this, I'm just running the first part. Okay, it has first an empty list, and then it prints the empty list. Then it creates another list. High 3, 4.8. I can print one item in those lists or select one item just like we did with tuples. And then print each individual thing and the length. This part up here is exactly the same as what you would do with tuples, okay? The parts later are where it starts to be a little bit different, okay? So here, now it says list of things index 0 equals 2. What do you think is going to happen when I try to do this? And my original list of things is up here. It's high, 3, and 4.8.
They will print high. Or, I mean, 3.
Well, I didn't tell it to print anything yet. I just said list of things index 0 equals 2. What do you think it's going to put in, like, what do you think my list will look like when I do that? And you can look at your screen as well. This is the original list of things. What will the new list of things be? Yeah.
I would turn to 2.
Right. High is going to change to 2. So basically what this is saying is take whatever's at index 0 and change it to a 2. Okay? And so now I'm going to run this again. And I know it's kind of small to see. Let's see if I can zoom in a little bit, actually. There we go. That's a little bit better. Okay? And it changed it. So before it was high 3, 4.8, and now it's 2, 3, 4.8. So I was able to change one item with just one line. I don't have to do all that indexing and splicing that we did last time. We only need to index that one thing. Okay, now the rest of this is just showing, okay, we can still splice everything the same way though. So just like we did with tuples, we can still do list of things 0, 2, that's going to print the things at index 0 and 1, just like with the tuple. This is going to print 1 and 2. This is going to print 1 until the end. This is going to print everything up until 2. Last thing, this is the last 2 things, and this is everything but the last thing. Okay, so this is a really useful resource when you're trying to learn how to splice your list. okay, and try to figure out how to get certain items. You can look here to see, okay, how did they get the last two things? This tells you how to do it. Oopsie. Okay. All right, so now let's look at how to convert. Yeah.
So if you want to get the last two things equal to a number, you just like usually a couple, or like the brackets 2 and -2 equals.
Yeah, hold on. Let me go back so I can. So like here, this one.
Yeah, so if you want to change -2, or like the second one, you just say equals or.
Right. So I could say list of things -2 equals dog. And then that would change, that item, the second to last item. So let's take a look just to see, and you can see here it changed the second to last item to dog. Okay, so you just basically say the name of the list, the index in brackets, in square brackets, equals, and then whatever you want it to change to. Okay, all right, so this program shows how strings can be turned into lists. So it's a really easy command to remember because it's just the word list, right? So if I want to change a sentence into a list, I just take the word list and then put it in parentheses, okay? So I had the string A, B, C, D, E, and then it changed it to the letters A, B, C, D, and pretty simple, right? If I want to convert it back into a string, I just use dot join. So I would say, okay, this means that there's no spaces in between. It's just nothing, dot join, and then my list. If I wanted to put a space in between, I would just do quotes with a space, dot join. And look what happens now. Okay, so now it just put a space in between all the letters. If I want to put a comma in between each thing in the list, I would just put whatever in these quotes is going to be whatever I want it to show in between each item in my list. If I wanted it to be, I don't know, item, anything I put in here is going to show up in between those letters. Okay, so it can be sentences, words, text, plus signs, minus signs, whatever you want. It just needs to be in quotes, and then you put dot join my list. Now you can go here for reference on this. If you forget, oh, how do I join items in a list together? You always have this documentation here, which is going to show each of these things that we're going over, like altering a list. Let's see, list methods. Where's the dot join? Yeah, so you can see here, dot join is in there. So you can always look through those if you forget how to do any of these things. All right, so now let's do the first example, which is to spell it out. All right, so for the assignment here, it says, write the function spell name that takes a name as its input, so the name is going to be in a form of string, then returns a list where each letter in the name is an element. Okay, so for example, if I put Jessica in there, it's going to create a list with each letter on its own. Okay, so I like to use the scratch pad to test things out, and then I want to put my my example cases down here as print statements, or I can say x equals spell name Jessica, and then print that value. And this shows what the output's supposed to be. So, and then I'll try another one. I don't want to, yeah. Okay, and then we have, I don't know, y equals spell name Ariel. And then I'm going to print that value. And then show this here. Now, the reason I had to make it equal to a variable is because here we have a return statement at the end of our function and not a print statement. So if I just run it, it's not going to show anything. So I actually have to print that value, okay, of whatever is returned. All right, so this one is pretty a simpler one. We just went over how to turn a string into a list in the last section. How do I turn a string into a list, Bella? Okay. Yep, you just whatever the string is, yeah. And in this case, this string is going to be whatever name that they gave us. So it would just be list and then name because that's the parameter that they gave us. Okay? And then I'm going to take out these quotes. I don't know if you guys had the quotes or not. I don't really need to do anything else because that's the only step you need to take a string and turn it to a list. It's only a one-step process. So let's run this code to see if it looks like it's supposed to. If everything's correct, we should see Jessica as one letter. And it wasn't all right. Hmm? Yes. So index would be like, so if I want to get J out of this, I would say, so the name of this, it would be first letter equals X because that's the list I just created. And the item at index 0 is J. So I would say 0. This is basically getting the first item from that list rather than me just typing the letter J. That's indexing. Yeah. So now if I wanted to say print X0, that's actually going to print the letter J. Yeah, so you'll update it because you'll need to use indexing for a lot of the stuff you'll need to do in there.
So it will just update it.
Yeah, yeah, you'll just update it for the next one. Okay. All right, so here, question that she was having. So on the last assignment, we needed to use indexing rather than just typing out the name of something. If I tell you to put an item from one list in another list, you should be accessing the item in the list not by name but by its index, like I did here. All right, this should work for this function. It's only one step and then returning. You could actually have done that all in one thing all together. So let's try this as the unit test. I'm just going to copy and paste only the function. Don't copy anything other than the function. And then let's check it to see if it's correct. Okay, and it works. And you can always drop down here to see for each situation what your results were and what the difference were. Particularly if it doesn't match, you want to look at these because it'll tell you whatever little thing isn't right. Sometimes it's something as silly as just having a space there or something. All right, so we can submit that and continue. All right, questions, comments, concerns before I move on? Everyone, thumbs up, sideways down. Good. All right, so now we're going to look at splitting a string, okay? So let's look at the example. And here, let's just see what this does. Or do you guys want to guess what it does if you don't know already? What do you think split does to this string? Mm-hmm. Divides it. What do you think it probably divides it into? I didn't mean to. Oh, and I accidentally moved on. I think groups of 2. Anyone else have other guesses? What do you think split divides it into? By word? Could be. We shall find out. All right, let's see. All right, look, it divides it. It creates a list. So we see this is another way to create a list. and it is by word. Okay. Let's see. What do you think would happen if I put this here? And look what I did. I put a letter E there. What do you think would happen if I put a letter E in there?
First E of the sentence, let's split it into
Okay. Let's see what happens. Right. So the first E, but it actually wasn't only the first E. Where else did it?
two. Then that's E.
Yep, all of the E's. So if I put an E in here, that means that it means split it at every letter E. And if you look at the list, what do you notice about the list? What's missing? The E's, right? So it just says, okay, every time you see an E, create a new item in the list. So you can actually do that if you want to not just split it by spaces. If you need it by spaces, you just leave it blank. But if there's something else you want to split it by, like rainbow, you could do that as well. If you want to divide something into two parts because you only want the first half or something like that, you can split it by a word or something like that. Yeah.
So, what is it last time? If we need to see animations doing like
So for the last one, that's before we learned how to do this. So that would be just, you wouldn't take it out of the last one at all. You're just indexing it to put it into your new list.
so that's what
No, you're not taking anything out on the previous lesson. Now you might need to for the next one. Okay? But yeah, for here, we don't want to take anything out. Splitting is just a useful thing that you can do with lists, because now if I want like to change one thing in that sentence, I could take it out and then replace it with something else, and it makes it a bit easier. But again, if we just want to make a list of words, we just leave it blank. You could also technically you could put a space inside the split box with quotes, but you don't have to. But that's the default parameter for split. All right. All right, so now we have a new assignment. I'm going to open the Scratchpad. Looks like I already have my examples in there. And we want to create this sentence. So people are going to put in a greeting, and they're going to put a name with a space, the number, their age with a space, and then something that they enjoy. Okay? So basically just like this, name, age, hobby. Okay, and it's input as one string. And we want to take that input and print the sentence, hello, name. I also enjoy, and then whatever their interest was. So we're not actually using their age, but they're still going to input their age, so we have to be aware of that. Okay? So, given what we just learned, what could we do to take the user info and put it into a list? And this time we don't want a list with just each letter, we want each word. How could I do that? Let's start creating a variable mylist equals. How could I split up that input, the user info, by word? Sebastian, what do you think?
Okay.
You guys can look at the past, this last activity for ideas. Mason, do you think you know?
You just basically did it the last one.
Which was what?
I
Split.
don't know what the-
Yeah. So you're going to put the name of the string that you want to split. So in this case, what's the name of the string? Okay, that's the right, user info. Dot. Okay. Then the word. What's the word? Split. Right? And if we want to split by spaces, we don't need to put anything in there. You can put a space if you want, but you don't have to. Okay? And that's going to create a list of each item. So I'm actually going to print this first so we can see what happens, even though we're not done yet. Okay? I think I'm gonna do that if this ever runs. Hello. There we go. Okay, so I'm having an issue with the code servers. Let me try refreshing the page. No, I want to run tests. We gotta put the Jeopardy song on or something. Okay. All right, so I'm gonna try using idle. Hold on. Yeah. Okay, so I'm just copying my paste and pasting my code into idle because it's actually going to run, hopefully, if I do that. Well, it will run because it's not using the internet. So let's do this here. Okay, so you can see here, it just created the list. So it took the input, which was a string, Jose 17 hockey, and that's really hard to see. Hold on. Okay, so this is the original input. It was Jose 17 hockey separated by spaces, and it turned it into a list just separating by commas. Okay. So now that we know that, if I wanted to change this, okay, this is my list, and I want to use this list to say, hi, Jose, I also like hockey. How would I write that sentence? Or hello, Jose. I want it to look like this. Hello, Jose, I also enjoy hockey. Instead, it just is a list that says this. What do you think?
So you take position below, space,
Mm-hmm.
and
Mm-hmm.
then space,
Okay.
and then plus, and then in this case would be result.
Okay.
Well, between positions.
But we don't want to use the name. We want to use the indexing from the list. Right. And the name is called what index from my list? Because we're actually using this code here, and this is where it comes from. So what's the position of Jose in my list?
0.
0, right. Because it's the first item in the list.
Right. And then it'd be plus positions. I put exclamation point, space, I also enjoy space,
Okay.
positions, and plus 1, or minus 1,
Right, my list 1.
and then plus extension.
Good. And I think. All right, so now let's see. I think we might be able to return this as is. I'm commenting out this print statement because we don't want it to actually print that. Actually, I'll comment it out in a second because I want us to see what it looks like. Okay? So here, we're using indexing from the list because we don't know what the name's going to be. We just know it's going to be the first position in that list. Okay? So we need to use the index of 0. And then here we don't know what the sport is going to be, so we need to make sure that we use the index and not the actual word. All right, let me run this to see what happens. All right, so it says, hi, Jose, I also enjoy 17. So, Ender, what's wrong with this statement? It's supposed to say, hello, Jose, I also enjoy hockey, but it says instead, hello, Jose, I also enjoy 17. What do I need to change? Let me see if we can answer and then I'll.
So it has to say, well, was it, so, DJ 17?
No, it should say I also enjoy hockey, which is the last item in the list, but instead it says 17.
We can change the,
And this is the print statement that created that.
well, we can just put in, so my list one is the hockey and the like,
Well, no, that actually says 17. That's what it says, but it should say hockey.
do we have like a,
So this is
so greeting with,
this is the list, and this is what it's printing.
so should we do create, I guess,
But a couple people who were raising their hand. Do you want to call on somebody?
yeah,
Change the my list one to two, because right now it's on my list one, so, yeah, my composite goes 0, 1, and 17.
Right.
So if we want to have copy of
Exactly. So this is at index 1, and we want what's in index 2, right? This is one of the reasons why print statements are really useful when you're trying to debug code, because by having that list right there in front of us, it's easier to see what the issue is. Okay, and now it's correct, except for there's an extra space after Jose. Like, there shouldn't be a space before the quotation mark. How do I get rid of that? Bella, do you think you know how to get rid of that space?
Where is it?
Do you see here, it says, hello, Jose, space, exclamation point.
Oh, well,
And this is the sentence that it's printed.
is there a plus exclamation for bracket?
Yep, right here.
So delete the space in front.
Right, so we delete this space. Let's see what happens now. All right, yay, I think it looks perfect now, just like it's supposed to. We do need to comment out this print my list because we don't want that in our final answer. We want it to just say the statement, hello, I also enjoy hockey. Hello, I also enjoy robotics. We were just using that print statement to help us debug and understand the code. Okay, so print statements are there to help you, but they don't need to necessarily be in your final code. When you guys start using like GUIs, you might leave the print statements there because nobody will see them. So, all right, so now I'm going to copy and paste my function. Hopefully CodeHS is working again, and put that into my unit test. Okay, let's test it to see if it works. I don't know if right now it seems like oh, it is working now. Okay, and it did work with that statement. And I need to zoom out because I had zoomed in so you could see, but now we're back in CodeHS. All right, and now it's not wanting to. I need new batteries in here, so it kind of does that thing that happens when you need new batteries. Oh, okay, well, let me see that it worked, okay? There's one more here, a little bit more with 2D lists. This is just an example that you guys can explore. I really encourage you that with these, you like kind of run them, change them to see what happens. Here we have a tuple with a list embedded, so you can actually put a list inside of a tuple. You could put a list inside of a list. And you can see here it shows what you guys have been doing with 2-dimensionals, how you access those elements. You just okay. You guys already did some things where you had to print things that were in a 2-dimensional tuple. But you can, if it's a list, you can also change it the same way. So if I want to change the thing that's in at my tuple index 30, that means in the original is 1, 2, 3, or sorry, 0, 1, 2, 3. So this is the item. And then I'm changing the first thing in that list. So it would be the thing at this index, which is 0. So let's run this to see what happens. Okay. Now in this case, even though we're not really allowed to change tuples, since it's a list inside that tuple, you can change that list. Whereas if I try to change, let's see, if I tried to do my tuple 0, which is the first item in the tuple, equals 5. It gives me an error because I'm not allowed to change tuples. Okay? So that's actually one of the main reasons why lists are useful is because you can change them. So on the project, it's actually going to have you change each of your tuples into a list, which is actually really simple to do. How do I change a tuple into a list? Like if here I want to change this tuple in line 16 to a list, what do I do to it? And I'm actually modifying line 16. I'm not writing a new line of code. What's the difference between a list and a tuple, or how we write it? Chisholm. Right. So if I want to change this to a list, what would I do? Right. So just change these to brackets. That's all you have to do when you're changing it to a list. And now, when I run this, it's going to work, right? Or it's going to create a server and take forever to connect. But this would work because now, instead of trying to change, you can see here, it actually changed it instead of throwing an error because instead of it being a tuple, it's now a list. All right. So that's all of this activity. I think we have 15 minutes of class, so you guys can start working on 3.3, which is last part for part 1 of the project. So the first step is going to be changing all your tuples into lists, so you already know how to do it because we just did that, but I'll leave this up for you. And then most likely you'll finish it on Monday. Yeah.
Oh, so after this one, we have the project A, or
Yeah.
we have 3.4.
So part A is going to be the summatives that do, and then you'll work on part 4 once you get feedback. Yeah, so like,
So part A
it's just broken up into 2 parts because it's such a long project.
so
Even
part-
though it's only like 5 sections, it takes longer.
So part A is a summative, which is
Yeah.
after this one. And
Yeah.
there's also a part B, I guess.
Yeah.
And is that after this?
It's going to be trimester 2.